Morning. Continuing our journey in Hemshech Ayin Beis. So the conclusion of Ayin Beis, as we have it, was not finished by the Rebbe Rashab. So we're learning the Mittler Rebbe, which is the base source text of the Rebbe Rashab. The Maimer Mika Shem Elokeinu, we are page 388. Moving along here, it's a long Maimer that began all the way on page 361. So we're now 388. That's already a good 27 pages. And just for the record, it goes all the way till 434. So we have a good 12, 34, 46 pages to go. And all of it is helpful. I mean, obviously, some of it is very directly. You could see immediately the parallels to Ayin Beis. Some of it is a little more the bigger picture. And this Maimer, in turn, to repeat again, is based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer of Chanukah, Tovkuf Samach Zayin, which is printed in Torah and the explanation of it, which we have learned, and I referred to back and forth from time to time just to compare the expression, the language, the brevity by the Alter Rebbe, which becomes elaborate by the Mittler Rebbe, and even more so by the Rebbe Rashab. So, from basically page 384 is where I would say the Rebbe Rashab quotes from, and 384 and on, the Mittler Rebbe is the addition where the Rebbe Rashab never continued. And namely, it's about the effect of the yichud that we do learn in the Rebbe Rashab and Ayin Beis. The yichud of yichud tata, yichud elah, that whole the unity of the divine and existence on both levels, and then the joining of both of them together. And that, when the animal soul hears that and appreciates that contemplation, like we've been learning, that it could be explained to the seichel of the nefesh habamis, it agrees and supports, and it itself is convinced that it should embrace this higher, deeper truth of what is reality, not its own selfish desires, that is the animal soul's selfish desires, but rather to aspire to transcendence, to reach higher levels, as we've been explaining the details of that in the Biyah, the Sher Sheba Merkava, all the way till Atzilus and higher as well. So the Shema Yisrael Dafka, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that in turn leads to V'haftas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. Loving God with both parts of the heart, with both chambers, the right and left chamber, including the animal soul. Now, interesting, just for the record, he doesn't mention Baruch Shem here. Here he was speaking more according to the second explanation, that Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad is Yichud Elah, Yichud Tata. But he did say earlier that in broader terms, Shema, in general, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad is Yichud Elah, and Baruch Shem Kved Machus Levad is Yichud Tata. In Torah he does speak about it a little more. The Mittler Rebbe really goes with the second explanation, which is in Shema itself. But it's not a contradiction, because whatever we learned here can be applied to Baruch Shem as well. I'm just pointing it out because he did begin with that, but then really went and focused mostly on Hashem Elokeinu and Hashem Echad, also for obvious reasons, because that really captures that Hashem Elokeinu concept that we've been learning. So, what did we learn yesterday? We learned on page 387 and 388, the second parentheses, which talks about how that Nefesh Elikis and Nefesh Habamis bond, how they join together. The Nefesh Elikis manifests within, bislapshus, till a point it becomes Mohus Echad Mamish, where you cannot distinguish when you drink a cup of water, or when you walk, or when you talk, which Nefesh is it? Is it Nefesh Elikis, Nefesh Habamis have joined together as one. We don't even say we have 20 faculties. It's 10 faculties. The question is, who's controlling? Which faculties are in control? Is it the divine soul? And those faculties then are driven by godliness, toward godliness, or by godliness? Or is it the animal soul's 10 faculties, and then it's driven by its own selfish interests? So nefesh elikis manifests in the nefesh habamis to the point, like he brought with the neshama and guf, it feels. It's margish, targish on nefesh elikis. That even though it defies and negates any Torah Geshem, nevertheless, and it's not affected by the deeper levels, are not affected by the experience of the body, but still, the espouse of nefesh habamis, the excitement of the animal soul in its interests, affects the divine soul, and vice versa. But the goal, of course, is the opposite, that the nefesh elikis should affect the animal soul. But they do engage together. In a way, when we say, for example, that Yaakov dressed in the garments of Esav, that's one of the explanations. He wasn't just mevarer from a distance. He dressed in the garments of Esav. When a Shema comes down below, it does manifest in the garments of this world. Famous example I've given a number of times from the Baal Shem Tov. Like the king sends away his son to live in a distant land. And in order to earn his way, not spoiled in the palace, like an neshama is sent away from the spiritual worlds into this world, and it gets accustomed to the ways of the land, and it eats and sleeps and drinks and speaks the language of this world. Then when he receives a letter from Hashem, he wants to celebrate, but the world is not ready to celebrate for so spiritual letters coming from heaven. So that's why Hashem says, the Baal Shem Tov explains, that you say l'chaim. You give the example being that he gives out free cocktails and food. The animal soul and the body benefit and are celebrating because they're having a good meal. And meanwhile, the neshama is celebrating because it's experiencing a divine message, a divine experience. So the neshama does manifest in this world. Here it goes even further, that it actually transforms, that the animal soul too should love God. So it does engage, but it's introducing into existence the idea that God is beyond existence, like we learned Leishanisi. There's no shinui from the divine beyond existence and the divine within existence. That's what the nefesh elikis introduces, but introduces it in a way that manifests, engages with this world. And the same thing with ma and ban. That ma is mislabish and ban, like he said. Malchus goes down all the way below into behemoths and chayes of Yitzira, to the point of klipas nega vasiya. And then it affects that lower world place to then, instead of being ruach habehema, the spirit of the animal, to go downward, it should elevate and transcend l'mayla ba'aliyah the ruach ha'adam datzilis, because it draws from a place that beyond both shesevu beis deis kecha das tachten and das sag, where God engages with the world, but at the same time is removed from it. Loy niskanu alilis with a vav and loy with an aleph. And then he concluded, and this is Shema Yisrael, that Dafki Yisrael accomplishes this, because that's the nefesh elikis that's rooted in the core, Ner Hashem Nishmasam, Ner Havaya Nishmasadam. And that's why it has the power that also the animal soul should radiate, illuminate the animal soul with that Shem Havaya. So it's like Ma and Ban. And that's Havaya Lekenu. And La'asad Lave, he concludes with the final parentheses on page 388. La'asad Lave, this will be realized in the full sense of the word when we will see that La'asad Yikabla, that they receive from Elikus without any mamutzayim, like he said before, without the mamutza of the ayin, the emtza. And that's why also gufim, the very bodies, will receive divine energy like the souls, and they will live forever. And also nations of the world will be impacted the same way. Sheyapich Hashem el amim, that they too will be transformed. And that's why, since this is the loss of love, it will be realized, but it doesn't mean it will be innovated then. But also today we have that power. Because we have that, the neshama, the nefesh elikis, Shema Yisrael, we have that also today, that power to influence and transform the animal soul. And then finally he brings the raya from Mesiris Nefesh Beguf. We see the raya is that you can see that the body, not just the soul, a person's neshama could be so aflame with avarabba, like he says, that it should be consumed and completely consumed with godliness. But even the very body, as he said, even of a simple person, he calls it b'chol nitzuz kot mi Yisrael, meaning every nitzuz kot is of course the expression used on yechida. It doesn't mean cotton as a cotton be Yisrael, but he means that every Jew has that. And as a result, can have Mesiras Nefesh beguf. Fil neitles nafshecha, that's b'chol nafshecha, and the same b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha. Then the final parenthesis, which I said I need to look into and I haven't yet, so I just want to repeat it, that this is Mesiras Nefesh on Torah mitzvahs, Dafke, which is higher than Mesiras Nefesh of Ava Rabba, afilu beguf ka'avis. I read it again. I think the guf means the Ava Rabba, even when it affects the guf, like by the Ovis, it's still not the same level as Mesiras Nefesh and Torah mitzvahs. And that's why Shmi Havaya Leina Daiti Lehem. They don't have the Havaya aspect. The Havaya that he was talking, the highest level of the Etzem that comes all the way down below into the bodies as well. Whereas the Ovis had a level that affected the body, but was not quite that level. And I still want to look into it to see what it says in other Maimorim. So I'll get back to you about this as well. And that's where we concluded yesterday in the last class, at the end of the paragraph on page 388.
It doesn't mean that the Ovis didn't reach higher than the Mesiras Nefesh of today. Begilui. Maybe
well, he says, here he says it's Lamaila from the Mesiras Nefesh of the Ovis. And the Pasuk says it, Shmi Havaya Leina Daiti Lehem. You're asking whether the Ovis were great people. We know they were great. They were Merkava.
No, my question is that the Gilui, they felt more than Mesiras Nefesh today, that we're reaching more, but we don't feel it. They felt more.
That's one thing. And also, another aspect, the Ovis were before Matan Torah. In general, it did not affect the Gashmis of the world as after Matan Torah. So that's why Shmi Havaya Leina Daiti Lehem, as high as they reached, it was still a spiritual experience more than one that permeated the physicality of the world. Here we want b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzarecha lev basar, and we want it to be. So he's speaking about Mesiras Nefesh, also the gufim, that the guf itself is transformed. That is deeper later. So they had a higher spiritual experience, but not as much as permeating the very lowest of worlds. So the tachtenim. Okay.
Also, you said before that La'osid Lobo, it will be everything without the ayin be'emtza. That means without Tzimtzumim, everyone will be able to reach the way it's in Atmos.
We discuss everyone, their level, not everyone equally. It will be Mektana V'Agdelim, it will be Kulam Yedu Esi, as we've discussed. That's what he said. If you go back to page 386, he says there, Ma'asmus Alakuz, Leha Arav Aziv, the yesh miyesh, he said, the yesh hanivra will receive from the yesh amiti bli emtsoi of the ayin be'emtza. That's what he said there.
How is it possible? It's just a keach atzmos. It's not something that you could understand.
It's possible because thousands of years of work with the ayin refined the geshem. We talked about this many times. It's not possible in the beginning. First, you have to bring Elokus into the world. The ayin eliki, the ayin of the yesh hanivra, yichud tata. Then you have to bring the ayin of the yesh amiti, yichud ilah, and then you can come to the third level. That's thousands of years of Mesiras Nefesh and Aveda and Birur. It's exactly why we're all the Masenu V'Avedesenu prepared the Kalim of this world to receive and be Makabel the highest levels of Elokus. So it's not something you come to easily. No, heavy prices were paid for this. Okay. Are there any other questions? That will continue on 388, the new paragraph. So there's one more paragraph he wants to talk about Shema. He's going to go back to Shema Yisrael, the meaning of Shema. So and then we're going to go back to the mashal of Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, the Ner, the Shem, the Psila, the Shemen, and the Oir. On the next page, 389, just to give you the structure here. So now, remember, Shema Yisrael, he said, Shema Loshen Havana. And he went further, citing from the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, that Havana means that when we contemplate in our mind, and Bina Liba, the Bina of the heart, We contemplate that. That's the Shema Yisrael. So when Yisrael contemplates on all this, Yesh Ma'ayin, and the connection to the highest levels of the divine, and that the divine comes down below as it is above, everything we've learned. So now he's going to talk more about the Shema. What kind of level of understanding is it? That's what this paragraph is concerned with. So we're reading now, new paragraph. The pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. Hine, and now, Mashakosha Shema Yisrael, Shmiya Zu, this Shmiya, when you say Shema, listen. This listening, Eina be'ezen levad. This is not just listening, as usually you say, listen to me, listen. Open your ears and hear what I'm saying, or listen to what I'm saying. So there could be also a very superficial level of listening. You're hearing the words. He's saying it's not just hearing the words. B'chitzenis, I should add. Eina be'ezen levad b'chitzenis. It's not just listening on a superficial or a surface or outer level. Surface level is a good word also. Ukamaimer. How do you pronounce? Hashma la'oznecha. Like the Maimer that says, they bring the pasuk below. Let's see here. Nisman el shin ayin daled. So that pasuk tells you that's listening with your ears. Listen to your ears, what your ears are hearing. It's a Gemara in Bereishis. Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. It was cited earlier on page 374. Let me see where he said Shema. Just a second. Shema losh navona. Avchana tev mevoled kamesh ashma laza. Okay. Ella hakavana hu bepnimius Binah shebemeich v'lev. That this there's different ways to listen. You know, for example, we could hear sounds, we could hear music, we could hear someone speaking. But then that could be a shmiya chitzenius. You hear the words. We're not talking about someone didn't hear. Or it could be a shmiya pnimius, where you're listening with full, like he says, but Pnimius Binah shebemeich v'lev, with the inner dimension of understanding in the mind and the heart. Now let me explain what means heart here. He doesn't mean emotions. He means the part of Bina Liba, that the heart also has an aspect of appreciating. Like, for example, if you listen to music, there's the appreciation of the music, even in the mind appreciates it. Bina appreciates it. Then there's an awakening and a stimulation of actual feelings. Feelings of longing, feelings of attachment, feelings of love. But Bina Liba also is a place where the understanding is connected to the heart. The heart understands, the heart discerns. Sometimes the word is the expression. The heart relates to. Sometimes it's referred to intuition for some people. I'm not sure if you could type it as intuition. But regardless, but Pnimius, that's the key here. So when you say Shema Yisrael, you mean listening intently, not just listening. When we listen to the Rebbe speak, you could listen and hear the general idea, but you can listen like a chayzer, and there was a far deeper concentration in listening. You literally had to suspend all of yourself and just absorb in the deepest possible way. So he's saying the Shema is not just a chitzenius dika listening, it's a pnimius dika bina shebemeich v'lev. And now he spells it out. Ubemoyach. So what's the moyach alev? Ubemoyach zeu inyan havchana v'hakara. When we say in the moyach, it means that the mind is not just looking at it and is again a surface level. It's havchana. It's a discernment. Havchana from the word boichen. It's like a discerning, distinguishing. V'hakara, recognition. That right away means you're looking closely. It's like when you say a Rav has to look closely at the evidence when it's being brought. He can't just look at it superficially. He has to delve into it and look into the details. So let's read every word here very carefully. It means havchana, you're discerning, you're distinguishing, and akara, recognizing. in the quality and the personality of the truth of the thing, of the matter that you're looking at, in its inner dimension, dafke. So you're not just looking at the surface level. I mean, to just use a very practical example, when you're sitting, let's say, mediation or counseling a couple that has challenges, you can't just listen to the problem and say, oh, you got a problem. You want to really understand, dig deeper, what's the root of the issue? And for that, you need to have havchana and akara. You have to get to know the personality. I mean, anyone who's done any research, any attorney who is looking into a case, you can't just look at it superficially. You have to look at all the angles and really get to know who we're dealing with. And in general, as we know, success in anything, if you want to pitch someone a business proposal or pitch someone to donate money, the more you know about them, the more likely you're going to connect with them. So it's all about going deeper and appreciating. So he's saying basically, Shema Yisrael is emphasizing all of that it's not just a superficial, because remember, everything we learned, if you were just going to say Shema Yisrael, and even in a very iber-flechlich way, in a more superficial way, contemplate on Yesh Ma'ayin and the two levels of Ayin and the Parsa and that the Eibishter by the Eibishter, that's all like one. Everything we learned, if it's going to be very surface level, very superficial, it's not going to have the impact that we want it to have. So that's why he's emphasizing that the Shema means a very serious immersion in the subject matter that we're talking about here. I mean, each word here carries, even if he had just said amitis hadover, but he says eichus u'mohus shamitis hadover b'pnimius shalei dafke. I don't want to now go and break down which one. I'm sure every word adds something, but suffice it to say, it's very clearly a very profound and deep immersion, and dissecting the details and really getting to the bottom of the truth of the matter. That's what the Shema means here. Shezeu Shema lashon havana de bina, and this is what it means when we say Shema, from the word havana of bina, of the understanding of bina. Because if you just said Shema itself and you didn't explain that it meant havana of bina, you could say Shema Yisrael, listen, and they hear the words Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and that's that. But here is make it clear that it's from the word havana of the bina. Zuhi ha'izbananus v'hakore b'amitis hadover. This is referring to the contemplation and the hakore. Hakore is like you come to a resonating clarity, a recognition. B'amitis hadover. So you like sense it resonates with you, the truth of it. Talked about it a number of times. His samtus. That you could hear an idea, and you could even say, sounds right, it's agreeable to me, makes sense, but it doesn't yet resonate. It doesn't yet say, that moment, that aha moment where you really feel, wow, that hit the nail on the head, so to speak. You really get it. So he's saying, that in his mind, it becomes so resonating true, the way it actually is in its ultimate truth. So no, you could have a truth, but it's not become one with you yet. There are many truths in life, and many true ideas that we have not yet learned to fully appreciate. Here he's saying that the emes lamite of the inyan, of what inyan? Shavaya lekenu. Well, I'll talk about that in a moment. 1 second, let me stop. Let me go back. That it's that which is ultimately true has become now resonating completely with you, which of course is critical here again. If you're going to affect the animal soul, you have to have that type of internalization. If it's going to be superficial or surface, it's not going to do the work. And what are we talking about here? This is a rule in general, Shema, anything. But here the Shema is about something specific. What? Havaya lekenu, havaya echad. So he says, what is the emes lamite? Shavaya lekenu. That Havaya is Elokeinu. B'chinas achdus pshuta, or echad poshet mamish, ki'iluhu. So that truth, that Havaya is Elokeinu, that the Havaya in this highest level becomes Elokeinu, in a completely seamless and utter unity. So that truth has now entered in this through Shema Yisrael Havaya L'Keinu Havaya Echad. That Shema Yisrael has taken the concept of Havaya L'Keinu Havaya Echad and made it Ki'ilu Hu Roya B'Riyah Chushis Mekarev Mamash. That the person, even though it's Shema, he's saying you've so immersed yourself and so connected and resonated, it's as if he sees it physically, as if he's looking at it from very close up. So now he's adding that the Shema is coming to a point of almost like Riyah. It's still not Riyah, obviously, or else it should have said Re'eh Yisrael or Re'u Yisrael. But the point being is that, but the resonance is such that this Havaya L'Keinu Havaya Echad, which is the idiom, the truth that we're addressing, the Shema Yisrael is causing it to become something that you fully recognize and fully resonates with you. Ki'ilu Huroya B'Riyah Chushis, as if he sees it with his very physical eye, literally Mekarev Mamash, close up. So it's not like listening to something or hearing about it or appreciating it from a distance. It's actually like Mekarev Mamash. Of course, you could ask the question, 1 second here. How do we get to such an ability to resonate like on that level? So now he's going to go back because the Shema is not just Shema, it's Shema Yisrael. Since it's Yisrael that's doing the Shmiya, and Yisrael is rooted in the highest levels of the divine, that's why when a Yisrael has the power to reach this type of resonance of Havaya L'Keinu. And that's what he says now. This power is only the Nefesh Elikis. And this further answers the question that he asked, the initial question at the bottom of 384, why Yisrael Dafka? Dafka Nefesh Elikis, Shanikri Yisrael. Shema Yisrael. So when you combine Yisrael, Nefesh Elikis, that's rooted on such a high level, and then they apply the Shema, Lashon Havana, but Havana, Havchana, V'Hakara, the whole in-depth internalization of it, that's when you reach this level. So in other words, if you had Shema without Yisrael, or you had Yisrael without Shema, you wouldn't reach that. So you see every word here that Mittler Rebbe is dissecting. Interestingly, in the Torah, he doesn't go through he does say Shema Lashon Havana, he does mention Yisrael, but the Mittler Rebbe, classic Binah, he's talking about Binah here. He's taking that Chachma of the Alter Rebbe and turning it into much more elaborate details. So this Nefesh Elikis is called Yisrael, and now he's going to explain what's Yisrael. Yisrael comes from the word Li Reish, or Yisrael is a combination of two words, Li Reish. So the first letter and the last letter is Li, and Shin Reish Aleph, reversing the letters, is Reish. Li Reish, which means it's ahead to me. Means it's a very high level, Reish. That the Reish, the head of everything, the beginning of everything, is internalized in me. Similar to what we said, that Yisrael Ola b'machshava. So he's added one more point about Li Reish. I think, if I recall correctly, the next line, he's going to speak about the meaning of Yisrael in the pasuk in Vayishlach, when the Esav's angel gave Yaakov the name Yisrael. It's going to bring that as well. But right now, Li Reish. So, because it's Yisrael, Li Reish, that's doing the Shema, that's the Dafke, the Nefesh Elikis has this koyach. This koyach to access, and not just access, to understand and appreciate and internalize in a resonating way the truth of Havaya L'Keinu Havaya Echad. So this is what he added here. A little more discussion on the word Shema and on the word Yisrael. But now he's going to go back to its impact on the animal soul, because that's the ultimate goal here, on behalf of Hashem Lekecha. But before I continue, any questions on what we just read?
I had a question just for the sake of digging into this issue of Havana deeper. I sort of have wondered from time to time why it doesn't say Re'u Yisrael, like see Israel, because they say seeing is believing. I don't mean to use that in such a trite fashion, but you said, I think in part of what you were giving over today, that this kind of almost like this, like chachma, like just this eureka moment where you say, "Oh, I got it. That these things are connected. That the Elikus that is the Shema that's above creation is the same as God that the sovereign over the creation."
So you ask me why it doesn't say Ru'u. Is that the question?
Yeah. Yes.
So the answer is it's implied here in this mimer, but in other places it speaks about it explicitly. So if you want to look it up, you can look it up. I'll just say briefly the following: that remember two things. First of all, you want this to be accessible to all people. Not everybody can reach the level of Riyah. And Shmiya is something that everybody can reach, because Shmiya really means to contemplate. Havana. That's the whole point. Riyah is not Havana. Riyah means to see. Not everybody has the ability. Prophets see. It says, Chacham Adaf Menavi. A Navi is a seer, a visionary. A Chacham is a wise person, uses Seichel. That's something accessible to all. Second point is Shmiya is much more internalized. When you see something, it can remain makif. It's true, there's a certain resonance. You see something, seeing is believing, but you don't necessarily understand it. And if you don't appreciate it, you can't explain it to the animal soul. So if the Nefesh Elikis would see the divine, all it could do is tell the animal soul, I saw something awesome. The animal say, explain it to me. And Shmiya is explanation. Riyah is not explanation. So you do the Shmiya as much as you can, to the point that when you really understand something, it's as if you're seeing it from close up. So what he means by as is not replace, because then it should have said and Re'u. That's not the goal. The goal is to understand it to the extent that it so resonates as if you saw it. So it has both qualities. But it's not necessarily coming to the level of Riyah. That's a very unique level. So the Maimarim talk about this in different places, both points I just made. But regarding what we're discussing here, for sure, makes sense, because the goal is that it should be able to explain it. And Shmi explains things. Riyah doesn't explain. Riyah just says, I saw something awesome and I was blown away.
Thank you. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So now he says, She'en koyach zeh rak b'nefesh alikis, shenik Yisrael lireish, v'gam, and additional, and v'gam. So in addition that the nefesh alikis has this power to understand, appreciate, and integrate, and resonate, it also is the power lahoyer zeh av b'seichel anushi. It also has the power to radiate this truth also into human intelligence, in the level of comprehension of the physical mind. In other words, it doesn't just remain a divine soul's unique, exclusive experience. The divine soul can also manifest and express it in Seichel Anushi. With Kriyas Tam Shem Yisrael. So now he's giving the reason he's called Yisrael. So he's bringing a raya that Yisrael has the power not just to experience this high level of the divine, but also to explain it in Seichel Gashmi. What was the reason for Tam Shem Yisrael? Ki sarisei melikim. So the Malach, after the wrestling all night with Yaakov, and Yaakov saying to him, I'm not going to let you go until you give me a blessing. So he gives him, he says, what's your name, Yaakov? He says, from now on, your name will be Yisrael. You wrestled and you prevailed over Elikim, which is like the Malach Elikim, and Anoshim, Betuchal, and you prevailed. You're more powerful. That means you've also affected Elikim and Anoshim. So he teaches now Elikim from the word Tzimtzum. That Kisorisim Elikim she'em b'chinas Tzimtzum shem Elikim master klal. You overpowered the Elikim, the Tzimtzum, and caused it that it shouldn't be mastered. That means Yisrael is not just that there's a connection to Li Rosh, the highest levels of the divine of Havaya Lekenu and Havaya Chod, but also the ability to affect the Tzimtzum itself, which is of course the cause of which is the force that conceals the divine from the animal soul. That the Tzimtzum should not be mastered. Hashem Elokeinu. That the same level of Havaya should come into Elokeinu, like we learned. Shem Lakim master klal. Canal. Like we learned before, Avaya Lakov Imay is with him. Also Elakov. He has mastered them both. So in Ishtalshlus we learned Havaya Lakim is Shemesh Shemogin, like the light of the sun and the sheath that conceals or that filters, like a partition. But in Neshamash Yisrael has the power to be Sarisei Melikim, to overpower the Lakim and reveal that the Tzimtzum is only it doesn't conceal, it's only part of the divine expression. So that's what he adds now in the Moyach. This is all what he called the Shmiya, the Pnimius Binah Shebemoyach. He's now going to speak about the Lev. He said Shebemoyach v'Lev, but first he finished with Moyach. So that's the mind, and it's coming dafke in a very Shema, a very Pnimius, an internalized type of listening and absorbing and internalizing, resonating. And Yisrael, it's dafke the power of Yisrael, which reaches these highest levels, but also has the ability to affect the Tzimtzum, and that even Seichel HaGashmi should also be affected because the Tzimtzum does not conceal on this level. Like we said earlier, Yisrael accesses that level where the Tzimtzum doesn't conceal. The Parsha doesn't conceal between the two levels, and that's why Das Elyon and Das Tacht join as one, as we learned earlier.
They are both Tolui Hotalia, right? Because it's Liroish, that's why it's Soriso.
Yeah, I would say that. Correct. Okay. So that's B'moyach. Remember, he said in the top line, second line, Pnimius Binah shebemoyach v'lev. So first he explained b'moychai on the fifth line, and now he's going to say Kamoy came b'lev. And so too it affects in the heart. But let me just stop. Anyone want any other questions of what we read till now? Okay.
I just wanted
So
to
same
mention,
thing.
I posted in the WhatsApp group, I posted the brachos that talks about Shema Laznacha, and also a kapitel of Likutei Torah that talks about Li Rosh.
Kamoy came belev, and so too it is with the heart. So it's just like we said, the bina, that you want to have Pnimius Binah shebemoyach, it also has to be belev. So he's going to explain what that means. Hari Omar B'rayim Behemna. That's a section of the Zohar, and I'm sure that they're going to refer to that. The truth is, it says it in Tikkun Ezer, not in Rayim Behemna. So below they say, so even though he writes here Reish Mem, that's usually Rayim Behemna, which is a part of the Zohar. The actual source that we know is in Tikkun Ezer, which we say every Friday, Pasach Elio. The Bina Liba, that's what it says in Zohar. Bina Liba. The Bina, the discerning heart, or Bina connected to Lev. So we learned till now Bina connected to Moyach. Bina. Like it says, V'ten b'libeinu Bina. We actually say this in Avos Elam, right before Shema, that give us, V'ten b'libeinu, give in our heart the discernment or the understanding of Bina. So you see Bina now connecting to the heart, not just to the mind. Shalev Maven. The Lev discerns. The Lev understands. Now, as I said before, some people refer to this as intuition. I am not convinced that that's correct, because intuition can be interpreted in many ways. But there's an element in Bina, like when we say, for example, Bina Yeseda Nitna Be'isha, that it's not just a matter of understanding things better or breaking it down to more detail. Bina also has a level of like we say a maven. What is a maven? You know, a chacham is a wise person. A maven is a person who has, like you also say, a certain experience. There's a maven. This person has, you could trust them because they have a certain level of experience. It's more than just a good mind. That's my point. It's not just about a prodigy. It's not just having a lot of brain power. Maven requires a certain element of intellectual intuitiveness. I know I'm using the word intuition, but a certain intellectual alacrity, and that you would say go to a maven. Person's a maven in this subject. This person is an expert, so to speak. So it's a bina experience. It's not lev as in lev emotions where you feel something, but in the mind, the person senses. You can even say it's maybe the sixth sense, or you sense something with the mind. It's not faith, and it's not super rational. It's in the world of bina, but it's something a little less tangible than purely understanding. So what does a maven know that a non-maven doesn't know? They're both looking at the same situation. The maven adds some type of element that you just see. They have a certain deeper sense of things,
like wisdom.
that will help get that clarity. So point being here is that he's going over that when you say Shema, which is Bina, Havana. So he said Havana Pnimius Binah shebemoach, which we discussed what that meant, dissecting and Havana, recognizing and distinguishing and discerning and recognizing, and very so-called in the very dissecting the very personality of and the emes of the thing. And now he's talking about being shalev maven. That there's also this level of you reaching a certain level of, even though I used the word resonance earlier, but now the resonance is also somewhat even deeper in the sense that it's you feel it's right. You feel it's right, which is what I would add in the that's what the lev adds to the mayach. So now, shalev maven, gam hu. What's that? Shalev maven, gam hu umasig. That the lev also understands umasig and comprehends umakir and recognizes amitis yichud elah hazeh, the truth of this higher level of yichud of Havaya Elokeinu. V'zeu shenikra kodev hargosha belev, and that's what is called a recognition and a feeling in the heart. You feel the truth of it, the resonating truth of it. So there's an intellectual component and there's an emotional component, or I would say a heart component, a feeling component. And we're not talking about Vahafta now, because this is all still Shema. Vahafta is an actual fiery, passionate love to something. This is in the mind. You know, the first thing that comes to me is when I think about it is somewhat a little like he speaks in Tanya, chapter 16, which I finished recently teaching, where he talks about Talumas Libe, and he talks about the Ava Musateres B'chobamoyach and Talumas Libe, that even if you don't have a full-blown fiery passion, but your mind recognizes this is worthy of love. This is worthy, you appreciate it. So it is an element, there's a certain emotional element, it's just not a full-blown fiery passion and longing that you would call Ava Kiddush Be'esh or Ava Bizgalus Libe. So there's there's something common between that and this, I believe, but I don't want to really say that because Tanya is talking about a different thing altogether, and may not be exactly, just using it as somewhat of an example that you could have an intellectual so-called sense that this is worth loving, even though the love is not really developed, like he says there, B'chinas Ibur, it's not developed into a full-blown love, but it's worthy of loving, and therefore you sense it as well in that way. You sense its truth. So bottom line is, both intellectually and emotion and feeling-wise, the Shema Yisrael means Yisrael sensing the truth of this bittul, this yichud. Now, why he mentions yichud elah most likely is because it's Havaya Elokeinu, and that yichud elah then comes into Havaya Echad, into yichud Tata, and that's what he calls hakodev hargosha belev.
It's interesting. There's a Likutei Torah that says "V'tembeli beno hayinu lahavin davar mitoch davar," to understand something that's within something else. What's the Pnimius of it?
Well, look, to be very honest, there are quite a few Maimorim that talk about this topic. Likutei Torah is just one of many, and I intentionally did not want to bring other Maimorim because in different Maimorim, there are different ways this is explained. So every Maimer sometimes it could be very aligned with what we're learning here. Sometimes it's focusing on a different point. Sometimes it's very different than what it says here. So I just want to qualify that even though some of these ideas you will find in other places, including Likutei Torah, and by all means, I definitely, in the process of learning this, go ahead and do the research and look and find it everywhere. As I always say, Sefer Likutim, if you look under this on Bina and Bina Liba, you'll find quite a few explanations, and they all are valuable. Some can help understand this. Some have different emphasis and points of emphasis. So, so what I try to do in teaching this is I try to explain what it says here. If something is not clear here, then it's always good to look. Maybe there's another place that clarifies it. But if it's clear, even though it's good to look at those places, but I already call that processing and already like so-called connecting it to. That's why I'm careful often when questions are asked here. I'll say, well, that says in a different mimer, and we can discuss it there, because I know that it's not always going to be consistent and so on. I'm not negating the what you posted or what you're pointing out now. Could very well be, could very much help. But I personally avoid just looking another place where this is discussed, because I can give you now 20 Maimorim right now that this is discussed, and I don't even want to go there because each one of them has different sides to it. So I'm just I'm saying this just in sharing the methodology I'm using and how I teach this. So I try to focus here. If there's a question, then obviously you got to explore further, like we talked before about Mesiras Nefesh of the Guf. But by all means, if somebody sees a point that you think can help understand this better or clarify something, I'm finally open to it. I'm just telling you my approach to this. So do you see something there that you think helps understand this better, or you think it's different? I didn't look inside Likutei Torah.
I think it's just a more concise explanation. He goes into Bittul too. He says the
but you found it probably in a random search, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But
the reason so that's why I'm qualifying, because often what you really want to do is look where this mimer itself is quoting Maimorim before it. So the random search, you can definitely find gems and good stuff, but it's not always going to be the full comprehensive picture of this particular topic. So
I hear you loud and clear. I was trying to find the mimer. It says Yisraeli Rosh in the bottom. It says there's something from the Admor Emtzai Vayikra and Parshas Vayikra, but I couldn't find it online. That's where I started, and then this other thing.
It's all right. Up. It's fine. Okay, good.
Anyways, okay, sorry.
I'm saying no need to. This is not. I just wanted to share with everyone the methodology being used. Any other questions on what we just learned here?
Lehoir in davening, v'sein belibeinu bino, lehovin ulehaskil.
Right. But I think the focus here he wants to say is the connection of Bina to Lev. But it's correct. Yeah, that's the full expression. Correct. Okay. So, any questions, or we'll continue? Now, there's a brackets here. Let's go. V'afal pi. And though this that we just discussed, the libenu, same libenu bina, and that bina liba, though this is referring v'afal pi shezeh b'chol hayimoni, even though this is referring to the divine soul, the heart, in the right side of the heart. Shesham mishkan ruach hachayim shenikra ruach ha'adam ha'ela l'mayla. That's the residence, the place that the ruach hachayim, like he says in Tanya, not the blood, but the oxygenation of the blood, physically, but spiritually, the ruach hachayim from the ruach ha'adam ha'ela l'mayla. The transcendent element in the right side of the heart, Mikol Mokim, and here we want to say that it's also affecting B'chol Levavcha, B'shnei Yitzarecha, the Yitzhar, the other side of the heart, Mikol Mokim, Meir Hu Mispashet Gam Belev, Basar HaChumri, irradiates and extends like he says in Tanya, that it also spills over and extends also into the heart of flesh, hachumri, the crass and coarse, which he's referring to as the left, shegam hu, that also that side of the heart, yakir v'yargish bebina, will recognize and resonate and feel the bina, with the bina of Shema. And this contemplation, lispol gam hu, that left side should also be excited and impacted. Berino va'ava, interesting expression, rino va'ava, with song and love, with joy and love. Kamoi, the libi upsari yiranenu el kel chai, that my heart and my flesh will sing, will celebrate. El kel chai, to the living God. That's in Tehillim. He says in below you, it's Tehillim Pei Daled 84. So you see here, the libi psari, maybe that's the diuk, libi and psari. So it's not just the right side of the heart, the whole heart and the flesh is iranenu, is mispol. That's why I use the word rina, va'ava. Okay. So all this is really elaborating on what we've learned already earlier about the Shema and V'ahavta, but he's going into more detail and filling in more points in understanding the impact. Now that we understand that the Shema is a much deeper contemplation, and it's Yisrael, and it also affects the Mayach and the Lev. This all helps appreciate how from the Shema we'll come to V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. That's essentially what we're learning right now. And now he takes us back to the pasuk V'yadaita again, which was brought several times. Specifically, at the bottom of page 385, he says now like this. V'zeu gam ken ha'inyan shel mitzvahs hadas b'yichudei Eloah d'Elokus. So now we talked about Bina. It seems like he wants to now also introduce Das into the picture. Because it says mitzvahs hadas. So we have Shema Yisrael. Shema here means Havana Bina. But then we have another pasuk, V'yadaita hayem. V'yadaita is not the word Bina, it's Das. So he's saying it's connected to what we're learning here too. The mitzvah of the Das, that we have a Das, that we have to have. A das is a perception, a perspective. The das is a different level than bina. Yichudei lov elikus, like it says, Kamesha Kosa, v'yadaita hayem, v'ashavesa levavecha. So there too, you see that the yadaita hayem, you shall know. Knowledge, das, is from the word hiskashrus. You bind yourself, like he says in Tanya, and v'ashavesa, you shall turn it and internalize it into your heart. And what? What should you know? The same idea. Ki havaya hu elikim, like we said, b'shamayim imal v'aretz mitachas. That havaya hu elikim, and he compared that to havaya lekenu in Shema. So here you have the two psukim. Remember, he asked before, doesn't it say ein eid milvade, and what is Shema Yisrael coming to add? So he's now equating Shema Yisrael to be a daita. That there's a connection between them. Both of them say that there's a mitzvah, the mitzvah Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Echad, that you should understand, appreciate, internalize in the Moyach and Lev, Bina, and now V'yadaita says that you shall know with us, and it shall also in Levavcha, Havayu Elikim, Yichudei Lo, Yichudei Tata. Both Yichudei Lo, Yichudei Tata, which we learned is Havaya Elokeinu and Havaya Echad, or Havaya and Elokeinu. B'shneim ein oid b'shavah kanal. That b'shneim, the end of the pasuk is b'shamayim amal v'aretz mitachas ein oid. Ein oid, on both of them equally, like we learned earlier. So now he's going to explain what does das come to add? What is the v'yadaita? And of course, then we have to understand why you need two psukim is Shema including only Bina? Does it also include Das? So we'll see how he's going to explain this. But that's what he's entering right now into explaining what is by Yadaita, the same idea, but now in the level of Das. And this is classic. This is Mittler Rebbe's addition that we don't find in the Alter Rebbe's original Maimer. I have to look again, but I'm almost sure he doesn't bring V'yadaita there or Das. But the Mittler Rebbe does. And yes, it would have been interesting to see what the Rebbe Rashab would do, but I could say this. V'yadaita is a very central theme in volume 2 and through volume 3. So my feeling is that there's no question the Rebbe Rashab would have brought V'yadaita into the picture, because V'yadaita Yem is very much the themes of Mamayla Lamata Mamat Lamayla in the interface of Yichud. But we'll address that once we finish the Mittler Rebbe, then we'll see how we can apply it back to Ayin Beis in the context of things. So I think I should stop here, because now he's going to talk about what Das is, and I don't want to just read quickly, I want to do it slowly. So, but we did enter this domain here. Let me just see. Yeah. Yeah, he's going to discuss Bina and Das. Interesting. Yeah. I think I'm going to stop here, but I'll stop for any questions now. No questions? Okay, so then I'm going to stop here. Top of basically, well, the bottom of page 380.